All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Patriots First and Goal. I am Alec Shane here, as always, with my good buddy Rich Hill, breaking down a fairly absurd first 72 or so hours of free agency. Rich Hill, we were talking before we went on air. I feel like every year we say this. What a wild start to free agency. But I feel like this year feels a little different because there's been a lot of moves made very quickly, and for me at least, a lot of those moves were pretty unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, I personally really love what the Patriots have been doing specifically. But yeah, a lot of changes around the league. Kirk Cousins taking a 4-year, $180 million contract with the Falcons. That's massive. Baker Mayfield getting $100 million with the Bucks. Can we just throw that back? Say $100 million for Baker Mayfield over 3 years. Remember when Drew Bledsoe signed his like $103 million contract for a decade? Back in 2000 or 1990, like that's absurd how far the money has gone, especially for the caliber of player where Drew Bledsoe was, that like Pro Bowl level quarterback. And like Baker Mayfield's pushing top 15 in the league kind of a thing. So lots of money being spent. Patriots haven't really gone into the wading into the river with all the other teams for the free agents out there. But Alec, what are your initial takes on free agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a weird year in a lot of ways, Rich. I don't know if there's really, I mean, maybe if you want to count Chris Jones and Kirk Cousins, maybe Derrick Henry are probably the three darlings of free agency, but I don't think there was really a year where there was like this. This is the guy everyone's watching where this particular player goes. And so because of that, I don't know if there's a way to make like a massive splash in free agency for any team, particularly the Patriots, because those three guys, Kirk Cousins, Chris Jones, and Derrick Henry, weren't real areas of need for New England. I mean, there were some people that thought Kirk would come to New England. I didn't ever see
No
that
way.
happening. No way I saw that happening. So I think it's kind of thing where you kind of have to grade on a curve a bit, where we're just not in a scenario where there's going to be this big splashy move because there weren't that many big splashy players to be had, which I like in a way because it makes you really kind of round out the roster. And because there's no massive names, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's a pretty exciting time to have a lot of cap space, which they still
Yeah.
do based on the move. But before we get to the Patriots, I'm very curious for your take, Rich Hill. Let's do first and goal. General consensus. We'll spend not too much time on this. This is the Pats podcast, but if you're looking around the league, what's your overall reaction to some of the big moves? Obviously, we got Kirk Cousins now in Atlanta. Derrick Henry went to the Baltimore Ravens, which I never saw coming. Chris Jones re-signed with the Chiefs, which we saw that coming, I think, personally. Any moves really, really surprise you around the league, not Patriots?
Not really. Honestly, I think that the dollar amount is the most shocking for me. You're seeing interior lineman Robert Hunt. I don't know if folks have heard about him before on the pod, but Robert Hunt, interior lineman, got a 5-year, $100 million deal. People are spending a lot of money on players, and it seems like a lot of the focus is on the interior, which I think is interesting to see. It kind of just speaks to the development of where teams are prioritizing at this stage. Like you look at who's been signed of the offensive tackles, not many. All of the top interior linemen off the board. And you kind of look at that similarly for the defensive interior linemen. As you said, Chris Jones returned 5-year, $158 million. The Ravens got the guy Matabuke back for 4 years, $98 million. Christian Wilkins, $110 million with the Raiders over 4 years. People are spending money and it's going to the interior. They know that pushing the pocket is going to be extra important, especially with the mobile quarterbacks these days. You want to make sure that there's no space up the gut for them to slip through. But I think for me, the fact that there aren't a lot of blue chip players, as you mentioned, makes this the most surprising because I feel like this is going to be one of those years that can, like that second, third tier of free agent signing is really going to make or break whether or not it's a success.
Before we get on to the Patriots, Rich, there's one kind of player to bridge the gap here. There's a player that went to not New England. He was in the mix with the Patriots. Calvin Ridley is not going to be a Patriot. There was talk of him going back to the Jaguars. He's now went to the Tennessee Titans on, in my opinion, a ridiculous contract for a receiver of his caliber. He is not a game-changing, let's plan around this guy, number one wide receiver. I think he was a good receiver. That would have been a good fit. What was it, 4 years, $92 million? 50 guaranteed. I didn't see that coming. What would you have wanted to give him to get to New England? There's no way I would have given him $92 million personally.
definitely not that. That puts him at like the top 7 or 8 receiver from a contract perspective in the league. And like, no, thank you. I mean, like, even without any of the off the field concerns, he's suspended an entire year for gambling. He, returned and put up 1,000 yards last year, but would you be willing to give top 10 player money for that type of production in a brand new system with you don't know who your quarterback is? I don't feel great about that. Like, there's some players that maybe it'd be worth the investment if you know that they're going to be a blue chip player. Like, obviously he's not going to be traded, but like Justin Jefferson would be one that'd be like, yeah, absolutely. He's performed at that level. He's worth it regardless of who's under center. You can figure it out, but no one's ever confused Calvin Ridley with a top 10 wide receiver. If you were to, you could probably name 20 wide receivers that you might say, yeah, I might take them over him. Like, it's not one of those deals where I feel like the Patriots have missed out. And obviously, like, you gotta have people to play the position, and we'll go more into how the Patriots have addressed it so far. But I don't know. And I feel like after the mishaps with Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm in no rush for the Patriots to overpay for another wide receiver.
Nor am I, particularly with the quarterback situation a little bit in flux. I will say, Rich Hill, a little bit less in flux than it was when we were talking this time last week. Let's get the second and goal. Patriots free agency, how they've done so far, who they brought in, who they've retained, who they've re-signed. If you remember, Rich Hill, and we spoke last time about our anticipation around free agency, what we thought the Patriots were going to do, what we were hoping they were going to do, I had one wish on my wish list, and that was bring back Jacoby Brissett. The Patriots did it, Rich Hill. That is going to be very tough to top as my favorite outside hire for free agency. I think that was a great move. It's leading the way. It's my favorite move so far. What's yours?
Oh, the Anthony Jennings signing. Without question. That was my pick at the end of the last podcast, was like, what is the one thing that could really push it over the top? You said it would be if they got Kendrick Bourne, or you expected me to say something about Kendrick Bourne. And guess what? I got both of the things that I would have wanted. Honestly, A+ so far for the Patriots, because if you were to say who are the best players on the team and who do they need to retain, Michael Onwenu signed that 3-year contract. He's back with them. Duggar is still transition tagged. They're likely still working out how to sign like the actual extension. He's shopping externally, figuring out what his market level is. Patriots will probably sign with that. That's what they did with Devin McCourty without the tag, but like they let him shop around. Uche is back on a pennies contract. It's definitely a prove it deal for himself. It's like a $3 million deal with upside up to $8 million, when his peers on the free agent market were getting closer to $8 million straight up. So I'm imagining that he's coming back and hoping that he can prove it and, earn himself a bigger contract next year. But it really is that return of Anthony Jennings, who really came into his own last year, core starter for the Patriots up front in their top ranked run defense. He led the league in tackles for loss against the run. He, I believe the numbers came through from the next gen stats that he was number 1 in the history of its tracking, which goes back to 2016, and expected points like declined through the run. Like, he's created the most negative points through his run defense of any player in an individual season. So he is a blue chip run defender. He does still a good job setting the edge. He's exactly what they need out there. And to have him signed for 3 years on a $12 million contract with upside up to $24 million, that is a steal in my mind.
No, it is. I think what's been most pleasing to me so far is that I think the Patriots have found they've struck a really nice balance of bringing guys back at a price tag that's not going to break the bank at all. They're all key players. They're all core players. This is speaking very highly. These are all the 2020 draft class guys too, which is really nice. It's good to see the Patriots re-up guys after a while. I feel like there's a very long stretch where the Patriots kind of just didn't give guys second contracts for a lot of reasons. And it's good to see them getting second contracts and for good team-friendly amounts of dollar value. Again, that speaks to our earlier point about how there just isn't a wild, bullish market in free agency in 2024. But it really kind of the team-friendly thing, and it's nice. I think pound for pound, though, Rich, and I think in terms of money and value, I did not expect a 1-year, $8 million contract for Josh Uche, or $3 million contract. I'm very pleasantly surprised by that. I think it's obviously clearly a bet on yourself. He liked New England. Apparently, he took less money to stay here. I'm guessing his plan is, and hopefully it goes well for everybody, he has a 1-year monster season, and then next year he gets a big bag. And so good for him. And I'm glad if you're going to bet on yourself, you're betting on yourself here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like you can see the path for him too, because how much of the drop off was because Judon got hurt. And like that's not to say that Uche needs to have a premier blue chip pass rusher across him, but you look at his most frequently aligned players last year or in 2022 when he had his double digit sacks, he was primarily lining up with both Judon and Dietrich Wise on the field. That's a good trio of players there. Pass rusher, stout against the run. Like that's a good trio. Uche was allowed to just produce out there. His most frequent combinations this year was a rookie in Keon White and then Mac Wilson, who got a good deal with the Cardinals. I thought he did a great job. That is just a different level of players that he's lining up with on the defensive front. And so I'm hoping and expecting that this upcoming season he'll get back to being with that comparable talent around him up front, which will really allow him to produce more. Makes sense. I believe it. I think that'll be a great move for him.
What's up, guys? It's Alec from Patriots First and Gold on CLNS, and I'm talking to you today about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's also the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and then just watch the winnings roll in. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this past NFL season has been the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. It's so simple and easy to play. I just make my Prize Picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. As a Patriots fan, it's been pretty easy this past season to say they'd scored less than 2 touchdowns a game because the offense was putrid. But there's other ways to do it as well. This NBA season, you want Steph Curry to put up more than 30? Do you want Kevin Durant to put up more than 20? You can. Prize Picks is really fun and really easy to use. So download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. It's Prize Picks.
But Alec, my one other signing that we haven't touched on, Patriots came into this offseason without a real tight end on the entire roster. And they went out and they signed the best one available. And it just so happened to be Hunter Henry, who we are all familiar with, came back on a 3-year, $27 million contract, so $9 million a year. Very reasonable. What were your thoughts on that signing?
Again, I think he was the best available. And they had literally no tight ends on their roster. So I think it made sense. I would have been a little more upset if the contract was different. But I think what he got and what he got it for 3 years for $27 million, that's $9 million a year. I'm sure there are bonuses, incentives, but I think that's a very reasonable, fair win-win for both sides. He's like a 3-year, $27 million tight end. I don't think he was undervalued, overvalued. I think he got exactly what he was worth. I think that was very smart business savvy on both sides to be like, this is my market and I'd like to stay here. I'm also glad the Patriots signed a veteran because unfortunately, my guy, Pharaoh Brown, is not a Seahawk. Heartbreaker. One of those guys you just, good for him. He got 3.2, I think, a 1 year. Maybe he can come back in 2025 if the Seahawks don't work out. You never know. But I was very sad to see him go. But the Patriots brought in Austin Hooper, which I think is a decent signing. I'm not overly familiar with his resume, Rich. I know he spent some time around the league. He's kind of been like, not a journeyman, but he hasn't had like a home where he's found his ground yet. Any early scouting report on Austin Hooper for the listeners who might not know a lot about him?
Yeah, so he comes over from the Browns, very familiar with the Van Pelt offense and the system. It's always made sense. Like, when the Patriots signed Donovan Peoples-Jones in a couple of days, like it's another one of those that's been telegraphed. But Hooper knows the system. He's a good tight end number 2. He is out there. They used him as an inline blocker. I believe it was like on 70% of his snaps out there. But when he was with the Falcons beforehand in the Shanahan offense, he was a receiving tight end. So he has like a low level threshold to do it both. As far as tight ends number 2 go, that's solid. And for $3 million a year, you're not going to get a better deal than that for what he is capable of doing out there. He's not going to be Gronk. He's not going to be Martellus Bennett. He's going to be, perhaps Scott Chandler-esque, but actually produce. It's going to be like a fine tight end number 2. I think everyone will look back on, how he performed and be like, that was fair. He played about, half of the offensive snaps, gave some like good attempts in the run game, and he caught about 15 catches, 20 catches for like 200 yards over the course of the season. That's great. I don't think anyone's expecting him to be a 800-yard receiver or anything like that. But as far as tight ends number 2, this is a pretty solid deal.
I think it is too. I think the real question I still don't know the answer to is like, are they done signing tight ends? I think they might want to bring in one more or draft one more, get
Definitely.
one more in that room. I'm not sure if it's going to come through free agency or the draft, but I imagine they're not going to just go those 2 tight ends because they don't really have a Mike Gesicki on the roster anymore, which I'm not in the slightest upset about. He just wasn't really an effective free agent for the Patriots, and that's fine. It happens. He's moved on. Good for him. Best of luck in Cincinnati, Mike. But I think one more tight end will be coming at some point. And hopefully it's going to be more of a kind of hybrid receiving blocking tight end because we don't really have that just yet. But you never know. I don't really understand what the Patriots are doing offensively. I'm sure they have a vision. But again, the name of the game thus far, Rich, has it's really more been re-sign guys and not sign guys. Which I'm totally happy with that.
Totally. Like, I mean, reflecting on who's been available, I love the Antonio Gibson signing. They finally have a third down back again. He was great for Washington out there. He has like 1,000-yard season under his belt, but he can run, he can catch. He is a great third down option. Patriots, I mean, when you look in retrospect, what went wrong over the past few years? Failed with the player development on a lot of things. They forewent the offensive line. They did not give Mac Jones a third down back for whatever reason. First time in the Bill Belichick era that they did not have a Kevin Falk or a Shane Vereen or a James White in the backfield. They decided, our young quarterback doesn't need a safety blanket whatsoever. And of course it flamed out. And so to get one back, that's great. The Patriots have been investing in players in the right position. It would be nice to get a blue chip wide receiver. Would expect them to maybe look more in the trade market or, one of those next tier wide receivers and try again later. But I think that the Patriots are setting themselves up for success with the money that they had. They're spending in all the areas that I feel like maximizes their ability to win. Like how frustrating was it a few years back when like they wouldn't give Ted Karras the extra $1 million to make him stick around. And then therefore your offensive line is garbage. Like, pay Onwenu. You're not going to find a better tackle out there. Make sure you're paying, your different players that currently have been producing the system. You're not going to get a better tight end than Hunter Henry for as middling as he's been. You're not going to get a better one. So pay him. It's fine. And so for them to invest their money in that way, it makes me very, very hopeful for the rest of free agency and into the draft.
For sure. I mean, I think they went in-house when they could, and they went elsewhere when they needed to. And again, like I opened the podcast with it, I'll reiterate it here. My favorite signing, Jacoby Brissett. I mean, not. This isn't like wild, astute analysis right now, but he's the starter right now. It's basically because he's like the only guy in the room, unless you want Nathan Rourke to be your quarterback. So it's a pretty.
Well, you're not a Zappy fan?
Look, no, I'm not a Zappy fan. I'm just not. I'd be very curious to know if Zapp's going to be on the team come August, but that's a conversation for a later podcast. I think what the Jacoby Brissett signing does is it really opens up the draft in ways there wasn't before. They're now not like desperate for a quarterback at 3. They could still very well go quarterback at 3, but maybe they go Brissett and MHJ and get like trade back up in the late first round and get somebody at the end, or like an early round 2 quarterback. It's a lot more flexibility. Brissett's not going to win you one, but the Pats weren't going to win next year anyway. He'll get you 5-6 wins. He's a great teammate. He's a good locker room guy. Everybody loves him. He's a great bridge quarterback. I think it really sets the tone well for 2025 and beyond, the Jacoby Brissett in the room.
Totally. And I mean, like, I to that point of Brissett being the type of player that is great in the locker room, that to me has really stood out as the players that they're bringing in the players that they're retaining, and the players that they're letting walk. Taki from the Browns, they signed him at linebacker. Every single Cleveland Browns fan said, you know what? He's limited in some ways, but you're going to love how he plays. Everyone loved Gibson in Washington. You look at the players that they kept on the Patriots, Bourne, for all that he went through with the Patriots, where, you know how I feel. They just shelved him for no reason. And yet he kept coming out and saying the right thing over and over and over again. You got Jennings, who always does things the exact right way. You get those players that came out, that produced, that did not speak out, that like tried to keep the locker room together. And then you had those like Trent Brown, and they're like, yeah, we don't need you. Yeah, it's fine. You can go somewhere else. It's okay. And that's, he might go somewhere else and have success, and that's okay. But the Patriots, shipped away Devontae Parker, who was very clearly talking. When the Mac Jones was getting benched, Parker was absolutely that source out there being like, well, I'm a receiver and I catch the ball way better from the other quarterback. I'm like, yeah, of course, everyone knows. That's fine. But they got rid of him. And so getting rid of the players that they did not feel built the culture has very clearly been also a tone of what they've been doing so far.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, they are rebuilding the Patriot way, or Patriot way 2.0. It's like the questions we're asking is, can this guy help the team? Does he fill an area of need? And does he represent the kind of caliber of personality we want to kind of build a team around? Everyone coming to New England, I don't think anybody thinks the Pats are going to make a deep playoff run in 2024. But is there a promise of something in 2025, 2026 that could be, I was there for the start of this, and I'm kind of relaunching a one-storied franchise? There's definitely some appeal there. And guys that are excited about that, welcome. And guys that aren't, you can be on your way. It's fun. And, it's weird to be in a free agency position, because I feel like even last year, Rich, we were kind of like, yeah, 2022 was a down year, but it was Matt Patricia's fault. We're back on it. Mac Jones is the guy. They're going to be competitive. We were all really excited about it. I think we're all, at least I am, approaching free agency in 2024 as, okay, we're kind of starting again at 2021 levels with a totally new coach, totally new system. And so how they're going to build this roster, we've got nothing to go by. We have no benchmark. This isn't the Bill Belichick run team anymore. It's not, lunch pail players was always a term for it. It's not versatility. It's not that linebacker that was cast off and did nothing at other franchises and came in here, became a Mike Vrabel or a Kyle Van Noy or a Rob Ninkovich. It's just it's a total new day, and I'm excited for what's left, because they're not done acquiring people yet. There's still more and more time to spend.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, for me, the big thing as well is that it feels like they're doing all of the little things right. Like in the past few years, like when they traded away Shaq Mason, it was very much like why are they doing that?
Yeah.
Why would you do that to your own roster? And there were multiple moves over the past few years where it's just like, why are you self-inflicting this issue right now? Like, you took a position that was a strength and then you made it a weakness, but why? And right now it feels like they're like, oh, these were players that were good for us last year. Let's keep them. Let's keep all of the players that were good for us last year, because we don't need to make ourselves worse there than we already were. And to me, that's a little thing that goes a long way to me being like, okay, I trust them. I have no reason to scratch my head at any of the moves they've made so far. And so I'm going to continue to say, you know what, until proven otherwise, y'all seem to be doing a pretty good job.
They most certainly do. And it's not over yet, Rich Hill, because I will say, as you and I sit here, they are not done. There are still some areas of need they have to focus on. We'll talk about that on Third and Goal coming right up. All right, buddy, we are back. Third and Goal. We talked about what they've done. We've broken down where they need to be, or the way they need to be thus far. What's next for the Patriots? There's things they still need to make happen. Kyle Duggar is still a transition tag guy. Maybe he's got a long-term deal coming. There are other areas of need the Patriots have to look at in free agency prior to the draft. So if you had to prioritize what the next steps are for New England that we haven't had a chance to look at yet, how would you rank it?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously have some pretty clear gaps on the roster from a immediacy standpoint. I think that they have a lot of positions already figured out. But like right now, who's their starting left tackle? That is a big question. Who's the wide receiver number one? That's a big question. Who's going to be the starting quarterback? Probably going to be Brissett to start the season, but that is another valid question to have. And then honestly, who's going to start at cornerback opposite of Christian Gonzalez? That's another question. They have talent to answer some of those, at least temporarily. Like I'm expecting Jonathan Jones will get some play out there. Alex Austin, I think, played really well last year when given the opportunity. So like they have players in line, so they don't have to overpay for someone. But love to see Stephon Gilmore come back. That'd be a great pairing on the outside with Gonzalez. But for the very immediate number one, they have to address this before they go into the draft, before they get out of this initial wave of free agency. They need to have a left tackle, because right now that is glaring, and you cannot go into the season. You cannot have a young quarterback with a hole at such a crucial position.
So, Rich, at this point, do you think they acquire a free agent left tackle, or would you rather make a trade for somebody?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players available at left tackle right now as it currently stands. Jonah Williams just signed a 2-year, $30 million contract with the Cardinals. That's kind of it. There's some quality players out there, Mekhi Becton, Tyron Smith, that are, maybe not full-time forever players in the sense of Tyron Smith, but like a pretty solid Band-Aid. DJ Humphries, Josh Jones, David Bakhtiari, like players that can start. That maybe won't be an elite franchise left tackle for the long term, but they can give you that, Nick Cager level player that you're like, you're solid. I don't have to worry about you in the way that I feel like for much of the past couple of seasons, you're worried about Vidarian Lowe. You're worried about Calvin Anderson. You're worried about all of the other players that they put out there on the offensive line because they're a big question mark. And I think that there's, 5 or 6 players right now that like have a starting experience at left tackle that could be relatively plug and play. That would be average at worst with some upside in the sense of Becton. And, the Jets just traded for a tackle from the Ravens. And so then therefore I'm expecting Becton not to go back to the Jets. I think that there are options for the Patriots to bring in bodies that will make it feel like the offensive line is no longer a question mark going into the year.
Yeah, I mean, there's not like it's such a crucial position, and I wondered if it might be a scenario. I know you don't want to draft. A lot of fans, at least, don't want to see the Patriots draft a left tackle at 3. But there's some really elite prospects coming out of the draft, and so maybe the next couple of days to week will be very, very telling if the Patriots don't address the left tackle position at all for free agency. Then it's not unreasonable to think don't get Drake May, they don't get HJ, they get Alt, and maybe that's their pick. Not the most exciting pick. I mean, I think Tyron Smith makes a lot of sense. He's got some gas in the tank still. He's 33, I think. Not young anymore, but still can move well. He's a good 1-2 year guy. I don't see why you can't start him and then draft maybe like a round 3 left tackle, develop him through the draft and whatnot. Why they can't do that? Yeah, I think that's definitely a legitimate one. With Calvin Ridley out, I think receiver is still an issue. I just don't really know, Rich, if there's any receiver out there right now in free agency where I'm like, you know what, they really should bring this guy in. I mean, maybe Marquise Brown could be a good fit. Mike Williams, I believe, just got released by the Chargers. That's a very recent, intriguing pick. But I don't really think there's any name that I were to list off in the available free agents. They're like, yes, let's go get this guy. So maybe that's a scenario where a trade's possible.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of free agent or wide receivers that will be off of their rookie deal or free agents in the next year or two that could be worth an investment. And so Mike Williams just released by the Chargers. Right now, the current state of the players on the market or on the street have either like a history of injuries or are a one-trick pony, especially if you're looking at the outside. If you look at the players that the Patriots have right now on the roster, like Pop Douglas, he's got the slot down. You're not worried about that. He's going to be the slot receiver. You have Juju Smith-Schuster still under contract for at least for now. So like you put them together and then you also have Kendrick Bourne. Those are 3 players that are on the interior. You need to have someone who can play on the outside, and it's not going to be Tyquan Thornton. So like that's where, there's not going to be a blue chip outside receiver for them to add that doesn't have any, bumps and bruises like Mike Williams. But that's when you start looking towards, as you said, like the Hollywood Brown move. Is that worthwhile? Get that speedster on the outside. I would also look at DJ Chark as kind of like a more discounted version of it, where I don't expect him to be a 1,000-yard receiver again, but he could be that Chris Hogan style. You're just like a burner on the outside. That's the type of player that I think that the Patriots might be able to get, other than Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I mentioned earlier. He comes with a lot of size on the outside. I think he's like 6'7", 230. He's got that big size out there. He can do a lot on the outside. He knows the system. There's that level of familiarity. Why not? That's like as it relates to who's going to be out there. I'm not going to say he's like the next Amon-Ra St. Brown or anything like that, but he's only 25. He has an 800-yard season under his belt. He was traded halfway through the year to the Lions from the Browns, just did not really produce at all last year whatsoever. So he would be super affordable. It would not break the bank whatsoever. I think that he's absolutely worth a camp body, give him a camp contract and see what happens, because pretty much every other wide receiver that you see on the market available right now is a slot player, is like one of those players that's on the inside.
Yeah, I feel like in years past, if this is a different Patriots team, we'd both be talking a lot about Hunter Renfrow as a perfect fit for New
Yeah.
England. He's only 28. He's got some experience with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's got a lot of gas in the tank. He's a good receiver, but like, do you need another slot guy right
No.
now? Probably not. I think he'd be fine in New England, but I just don't know what he brings to the table they don't already have under contract. Maybe Marquez Valdez Scantling could be somebody you look at, but again, everybody that we're talking about are just guys that like they'd be a decent fit maybe if you bring them in, and I don't think anybody that's left available. I'm going to be jumping up and down and doing cartwheels over the signing, and that's fine because this isn't the year for an offensive powerhouse anyway. It's a year to kind of just be efficient and hope you win some games. And again, maybe I talked about the possibility of drafting Alt with
Hmm.
the left tackle position if they don't really address somebody. Maybe if they go nowhere else with the receiver, that points more towards Marvin Harrison at number 3. There really is some nice flexibility there. And again, I was never super gung ho about Calvin Ridley anyway. I was kind of
Yeah.
neutral on him. I don't know if you were upset when the Pats didn't get him. They were
Not
in
at
on
all.
him, but like I don't think he would have been any kind of serious game changer. And I feel like the Titans are going to have a little bit of buyer's remorse with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge contract, as you said, that he's like a top 10 paid wide receiver right now. He's never been a top 10 receiver. I don't think he has the upside to become one at this stage of his career. Like, he can still be productive, but it's one where I'm like, I don't necessarily see that being one that is worth it. It's like when you look at the Jaguars and like a couple years ago, they Christian Kirk, just a massive contract. And like, he's produced, he's been fine. Has it made a difference for the Jaguars? No. And that's what I kind of view the Calvin Ridley move as. Is like, I mean, like it'd be nice to have. Is he going to put this team over the top? I don't think so.
No.
There's a lot of other players that really could do that. That like over the years, wish they would have acquired AJ Brown. Wish they would have acquired any of those other wide receivers like a DeAndre Hopkins. 4 years ago when like could have been something instead of Mohamed Sanu. But instead, the Patriots just don't have one of those players, and you don't need to force it. If it's not there, you don't need to make it try and happen. I'd much rather them go into the draft and say, you know what? We're going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Or, the Vikings are going to spend $1 billion to move up to pick number 3. We're going to have the 11th pick. Let's choose another one of those wide receivers out there. This is a deep wide receiver group in the top 20 overall. Get a few extra first round picks, as do what you said, and move back up into the first, up from 34. Get someone like a Bo Nix or a Penix, like whoever it's going to be. Like, that's a good, like a valid option as well. But like, there's more than one way to add to the roster from a wide receiver perspective. And if you're not completely confident that Ridley's going to produce at the level that he'll outperform the contract, it's not worth it in my mind.
No, I agree, Rich. We've been talking a lot about the offense, and understandably so. That was such a disaster last year. That's where their bulk of their areas of need are. The Patriots are doing pretty okay on defense. If they weren't to make any more defensive moves in free agency, I wouldn't be too upset. However, I want to throw one defensive name at you, Rich, see what you think and what the chances are. Justin Simmons, released by
Yeah.
the Broncos, still a free agent. Worried about his price tag, but in terms of fit, in terms of scheme, a duo of Duggar and Simmons makes this defense so much better right away. Any chance he comes to New England?
Oh, I mean, like if they can pay for it. Like, I think it's the Titans that were considering making a run for him. So I'm not sure if that's still on the table now that they spent so much on Ridley. But it's an option. I mean, if I'm the Patriots, what else are you going to spend your money on? There was a big part of kind of that pause for the Patriots with their big money spending. They still have $48 million in cap space that they can spend when you treat it as like effective, when they have to earmark money for their rookies. They have to spend it now. I'm sure, the rumor from Albert Breer was that they were willing to do up to 22 million a year for Ridley. So they probably were just like, all right, let's hold until this decision is made, and then we can start spending money again. You have to imagine a solid 10 million of that is for one of the tackles that they want to bring in. They got to make it up somewhere. I think Simmons could absolutely come in on that level of a deal. If Simmons comes in, you're looking at a 10 to $15 million per year situation, which could be worth it. I mean, he's 30 years old. It's not going to be a massive long-term deal, but, a 3 for 40 kind of a deal, I think could be very fair. He provides that center field ability that the Patriots have missed without Devin McCourty. It allows Duggar to go back to his natural position. Peppers can take over that Adrian Phillips role that he was really doing, where he can be just in the middle of it, be the true star athlete for them. They have some options, and obviously want Miles Bryant to come back as well. But yeah, this Patriots defense is in a pretty polished spot as it is. Returning Uche and Jennings is massive. They have so much talent up front already. Extend Barmore. Why not? If you have that cap space, just do it now. But I think they have a good top 3 at linebacker. They have a good top 5 rotation on the edge. They have a good top trio on the defensive interior. They have a good cornerback group. They have a good safety group. Everything obviously get like bolstered and shined a little bit, but overall they're in a really good spot.
I think they are. I mean, and again, like I don't think that there's any team, especially in the AFC East, that has made any moves right now where I'm like, oh crap, that was a great signing. The AFC East, I think, as a whole, is a little bit weaker than they were last year due to cap casualties. The Dolphins just cut Xavier Howard. There's some players that had name recognition. Gabe Davis from the Bills that just aren't what they were. Aaron Rodgers is running for vice president of the United States, apparently. So who the hell knows what the AFC is going to look like? The Pats have done a lot of good things. Again, I don't really want to give them an A because I don't know if this is really an offseason where you can really grade the way we used to be able to grade. But if you're unhappy with the way the Pats have handled it thus far, I don't know what you're expecting, honestly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like there's always times where you're like, I wish that they could have gotten a blue chip player. There just haven't been those players available at the positions that they really and truly need. Like the number of players at the positions that they would have loved to address all got tagged, and that's okay. Obviously, like you would have liked to be able to improve that wide receiver room, but like if those players weren't leaving, Evans came back with the Bucks. That's fine. Pittman didn't leave the Colts. The Bengals kept T. Higgins. T. Higgins is now potentially available for a trade.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens on that front. But it's one of those situations where Patriots, you can't spend money on a position that isn't there or on a player that doesn't exist. And so for all the idea of like, you have all this money, why can't you do it? As I said at the beginning, they've been spending it in the smart places with the players that they know that can produce in the system. So if we can't give them an A for right now, I think that they're still performing as well as you could expect.
Absolutely. The trend is rising upward, Chill. To that end, 4th and goal. We've already talked about our favorite signings. Mine's Brissett, yours is the Anthony Jennings re-signing. I'd love to know your biggest maybe disappointment and biggest surprise at this point in free agency, and maybe what you'd like to see them do next.
Yeah. My biggest surprise for the Patriots has I don't know, maybe if it's not that like Miles Bryant isn't back, but just like they didn't get in a veteran kicker or something. There's some like base level needs when you think of the Patriots special teams being one of the worst in the entire league. And it's truly one of those positions that you improve on the margins, but you lose a core special teamer in Mac Wilson. They let go of Chris Board. They just seem to have gotten a little bit weaker on special teams, and they did not have a lot of slack to give there. So I'm a little bit surprised that, re-signing Jalen Reagor to be your kick returner is the one move that they kind of really did there. But like, as far as surprises go, that's kind of a weak one. But it's one where, that really is a sign that the Belichick era is over, that the special team signings aren't full, running like the river.
Running like the river. I like it. I've said I mean, I don't know if it's my biggest disappointment, but again, I was really hoping to get Pharaoh Brown back on like one more year. I really liked him, but that's more just kind of the offense was so bad last season. He was like a lone bright spot, and that's not necessarily a compliment to Pharaoh Brown. It's more just like the offense was that bad. I was more hurt than I thought I'd be to see Mac Wilson go elsewhere. I actually thought he'd be back. I think he was a good fit. He's not like a irreplaceable player, but he had really good football last season. I thought he was primed to be another prime contributor on the team. He played defense, played special teams. To your point, they kind of lost a special teamer in that. So I think that might be a bigger loss than anybody lets on. In terms of one thing I want to see them do, I wouldn't mind them bringing in another cornerback. If it's not Miles Bryant, there are some decent guys out there. Like I said, Xavier Howard's now available. He's on the wrong side of 30, but he can still ball pretty well. They don't need like a shutdown elite corner, but if they need like one more complimentary like dime player, I like Michael Davis. They can bring in maybe like a resurgence 1 year Patrick Peterson for like one more kind of maybe safety hybrid transition thing. I think there's one more secondary guy they can bring in. If not Justin Simmons, which might be too expensive, there are some talented kind of second, third tier guys they could bring in to help round out that secondary. So I like to see them go there next.
I would too. Honestly, I would love to see that. I mentioned this not even really as a joke. Stephon Gilmore, he's a perfect fit. He's still a starting caliber cornerback out there. He's not the, defensive player of the year anymore, but he would be a very good number two. He, in my mind, is what Christian Gonzalez should be aspiring to be as a professional. Like, that is his upside, is to be Stephon Gilmore. And so to have two of them out there would be fantastic. And it would really give the Patriots some additional size on the outside. One of the biggest challenges is that like Jonathan Jones and Miles Bryant, Marcus Jones are all like 4 feet tall. So it's nice to like have one of those prototypical players out there that can run with the players, that is also just like a good leader. And I think he brings a lot of swagger out there. But as you said, like there's a lot of other defenders that they could really bring in to fill that role. But for me, something else, I mean, you can't get enough of those offensive linemen. As we mentioned, like I expect them to bring in one of those top tier tackles, but I also think that there's going to be more of the depth players that come in. There can be more of those veterans on the interior. I know that they signed Leggett over from the Bucks, Leverett. And so I think that they can bring in the players like the Cody Whitehair, the Dalton Risner, the Glowinski. Those are the players that I feel like can flesh out the roster when you feel like you don't have a lot of faith in that offensive line. And knowing that the fourth interior lineman, the third offensive tackle can start in a pinch is something that the Patriots haven't had for a few years, but it really is a sign that your team is in a really good position because your third tackle, your fourth interior lineman, they're going to play at least a third of your snaps in a given year because injuries happen. And if you don't have a player that you can plug and play and have success with, and you're going to be like, James Ferentz is going to be that guy, Antonio Mafi, like that's not a good position to put a young quarterback in if that's what the Patriots are going to go with, or, have Brissett out there. Like that's just going to be putting him in a position where he can't succeed. And so for the Patriots, they need to look at where they struggled the most in previous years. And that's really just fix the offensive line. Because you mentioned, what were we thinking of going into last year? You go back and listen to our pregame or preseason podcast. The one thing that we said was, this team will go as far as Mac Jones can take them, and Mac Jones will go as far as he can play behind this offensive line. Our biggest question mark was, can this offensive line develop into something? And they did not. They were the worst line in the entire league, and that is absolutely not the situation that the Patriots can put their next quarterback into.
What a great transition to my extra point question, Rich. We didn't really talk about Mac Jones in this podcast. He was still a Patriot last time you and I got together. How do you feel about that trade? Do you feel that a 6th-round pick is fair? Do you think that the Patriots got fleeced? Did they fleece the Jaguars? Do you think it's pretty fair? Like, what's your overall impression of the Mac Jones trade? And are you sad at all to see him go?
Yeah, of course I'm bummed. I thought that Mac Jones got the worst situation that you possibly could have put a young quarterback into as it relates to the team putting him in a situation for success. It wasn't even like the Patriots were putting him in a team and like the players just couldn't pull it together. It was the act of sabotage over years where he had a fairly promising rookie year that even in retrospect, it was like, they're not letting him throw the ball. They're not letting him throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. What's going on? Like that, his ticket coming out of college was his touch on the intermediate throws. You did not let him throw beyond 10 yards. What's going on here? And then all of a sudden you bring in Matt Patricia with a half-baked offense, and then you take away the fact that he can command at the line of scrimmage, which he did under Josh McDaniels, and said, we're going to take away any and all of your audibles. We're going to destroy your offensive line. We're going to make sure that there's no continuity anywhere whatsoever. And of course you're going to suffer. You're not going to produce. And then here we go yet again, third year, third offensive coordinator. We're going to break your offensive line even further. It's going to be a complete disaster out there. We're going to take the player that, was your safety blanket in Jacoby Myers, and we're going to bring in Juju Smith-Schuster. We're going to bring in new faces. We're going to not have a third down back again, because who needs that? And I supported the Juju signing over Jacoby just based off of upside. So I'll eat crow on that one as well. But it just felt like every single move that the Patriots did with Mac Jones under center was not to make him succeed. It was to give him another obstacle to try and overcome. And we saw him just absolutely break this past year against both the Cowboys and then the Saints. There was just no coming back from that. We talked about this during the season that like we've seen enough Jets quarterbacks over the years just crumble and see shadows and know that they're not going to do anything with the Jets. that we know we saw that with Mac Jones. We've seen that behavior. We've seen like just being unable to play anymore. So he was never going to come back with the Patriots. He was never going to be a success. I hope that he finds success somewhere else, because when he was playing well, he's very exciting to watch. I love when a quarterback can just drop it in the bucket anywhere on the field. And he had that touch and ability when he was at Alabama. He showed some of it in flashes with the Patriots, and then, Devontae Parker would drop it. And so I don't think he'll beat out Trevor Lawrence for the starting job with the Jaguars by any means. I don't think that they fleeced the Jaguars or the Jaguars fleeced the Patriots for a late round pick by any means, because how often do these off-cast quarterbacks ever actually turn into anything? It's just another lottery pick, so whatever. But it's one of those situations that I wish that the Patriots had put him in a better situation to succeed, because so much of it was just low-hanging fruit that they decided not to take advantage of, and that's what hurts the most.
Kind of wild that the two best quarterbacks coming out of the 2021 draft are now on the same team. Who'd have thought? But yeah, I mean, look, best of luck, Mac Jones. I would not trade that 2021 season for anything in terms of the next. It was a really, really fun season. A lot of promise. I think I made that number 2, my all-time, the top 20 moments drafting of Mac Jones. It just didn't quite shake out, and he's going to be a backup now, and maybe he'll get one more shot to start somewhere. And I don't know, maybe they'll use that 6th round pick on another quarterback at pick number 199, and he will become the second greatest quarterback of all time. You never know. So maybe Mac Jones will indirectly give us the next Tom Brady. Who knows? But hopefully, Rich Hill, next time we get together, it'll be next week or so, we'll have a lot more of a clear picture on free agency, because I imagine in a week from now, the bulk of the signings will have happened, and anything happening after this time next week will just be kind of like back end of the roster, camp bodies, training camp competition players that aren't likely or possible to be starters. So I think we'll have a much bigger sense of wins around this time next week, and then it's time to start talking draft, which I know is your favorite thing.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that there's so many, holes to be filled, roster spots to be addressed prior to the draft. And if we know anything about how the Patriots as a franchise have approached it, and I know that they'll continue to do this from a front office perspective, is that you want to have a veteran at every position. So there's no clear hole, but only opportunities to improve. And that allows you to take the best player in the draft. And I am just so excited based off of everything that Elliot Wolf has been saying about the Patriots finally drafting the best player on the board, and not overthinking it by figuring out who do they think is going to be the best player in their system, because that is how you get the Patriots overdrafting every single player for the past decade. And that's barely an exaggeration. They have always drafted below the consensus. I'm excited for them to just get the best player on the board and then figure it out. Just get the talent. They'll figure out how to put them on the field. That's the coach's job. But just put the best players that you can on the roster, and don't take an 8th round cornerback in the 2nd round anymore, please.
Yeah, it's going to be very weird to go into our draft prep and talk about players that there's actually a chance of the Patriots drafting. Where I'm going to have heard of the odds of me having heard of the guy they draft in the 1st round this year are really high. And I'm excited about that, because I did not know who Cole Strange was when they picked him. Hand up.
Nor know. Should you.
Yeah. But I'm psyched to break it down with you. I have not done my draft prep yet, so I'm not going to get into that one. But I'm psyched, man. It's been a fun free agency period, and I'm looking forward to see what the next week brings.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you. Until next time, Alec, you have a good one.
You too, buddy. See ya.